So, welcome to today's podcast. We're back again. I'm here with my friend Alessandra Long, estate attorney. She's been so great to help share so much wisdom around a space that I think a lot of people don't know a lot about. And so we're back again to talk around a topic that is can get very complicated very quickly. We're just going to do more of a flyover today, and in future episodes, maybe go deeper into some of these topics. But we're going to cover the topics around asset protection, right? We build up assets. We want to make sure we don't lose them or expose them to risk. And then obviously the other big piece of our world, which hits us on a daily basis, is taxes, right? How do we more efficiently manage and plan for a transfer of our wealth and assets to future generations with the least amount of tax as is legally allowed. So, Alessandra, thanks for joining me today.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for having me again, Tom. I really appreciate it.
No, this is great. It's great. And as we were chatting about this before, like we said, we can get super complicated about things. We're just trying to give you some food for thought and some ideas that you certainly would need to go talk to your own estate attorney to really hash things out for your situation. But, as we're building wealth, obviously we want to protect what I would call our number one asset is us, right? Our ability to earn and create things, right? And value that hopefully we use that to build assets. But as you start to build assets, we want to make sure that we protect them from loss, right? We don't want to lose all those wonderful things you've built. And so we need to protect them and think about it because we don't know what will happen in the future. Life changes quickly sometimes and things that are outside our control. So what can we do to get ahead of these things? So Alessandra, from your vantage point, let's just kick it off in the sense of why is asset protection so important for individuals, families, business owners, kind of in general? Why is this even important?
I get asked, obviously with regards to different things. People may want to protect their house, they may want to protect their
Mm,
business, they may want to protect their children from getting into, a bad marriage and losing their wealth, or protect, from creditors for themselves or for their, children, because sometimes we don't know how our for those with children, how their lives are going to pan out, right? Down the road. Nobody has a crystal ball. So, and the other big thing with asset protection is people want to protect from taxes from the government, obviously. And, a big discussion these days is for the high net worth individuals is at the end of 2025 it's going to result in the gift and estate tax exemption being reduced in half. So, for those that don't have wealth, $13 million or above, that's going to then be reduced to potentially 7 million or above. So anybody that's on the cusp of being taxed that has assets over 7 million now has to seriously consider some asset protection strategies ahead of time, and maybe put some irrevocable trusts in place, maybe take out some life insurance that they can pay some hefty premiums to. There's different things that they can do. But then again, you always have to weigh, you know, you know, you want to have enough money that you're going to be able to live in the manner that you want to live and not get it tied up in irrevocable vehicles. But you also want to protect it. So it's very important to for individuals to really talk about, what is the goal and what are you willing to give up for that goal, right? So, a lot of times someone will just say to me, I mean, I do not personally do a lot of Medicare and Medicaid protection, although I have plenty of attorneys I'm surrounded with that do that. So if someone needs advice in that area and they say, I want to protect, my home because of a nursing home situation down the road, or, so that I can actually qualify for governmental benefits, and that's something you have to think about way ahead of time and think about the pros and the cons of doing that, because that's a residence that you may want to have access to those funds down the road. So, there's lots of different reasons people seek asset protection, so, and it may be because you don't have enough money and you want to protect the one big asset you have, or it's because you have a lot of money and a lot of assets and you want to protect those assets from taxation.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, and and we've talked about it in prior episodes in this series around, let's start here with the trust. And there's obviously sometimes some confusion over this. And so the basic things you described around revocable or irrevocable, and there's a lot of different flavors for some of these things. But could remind our listeners again, what's kind of the difference here, and what do they do for asset protection, or don't do for asset protection, actually.
Right. I mean, generally, a revocable trust, it is revocable, right? Just like its name. And a revocable trust is not used for asset protection. It's mostly used to avoid probate and to dictate how the trust proceeds get distributed after your death, right? Because maybe you have minor children or you have major children, but you don't want them to have all their money at age 21 and you want it in different stages in their lives and different. So, a revocable trust is a really amazing vehicle because anything that is in it avoids probate, and it is a great tool. But if I was to create a revocable trust, I'm the grantor, and I'm the trustee, so I can still control. I have 100% control over that trust, and I can destroy it. I can, change it. I can amend it. I can put assets in the name of it, take assets out of the name of it. And so, for that reason, there's no asset protection, right? Whereas with an irrevocable trust, a lot of times, I mean, sometimes without getting into the nitty gritty, but, one of the main aspects is the grantor can't have full control or any control over the trust, right? Once they create it and they name another, a trustee of it, and the beneficiaries are named, it's irrevocable. And then the trust dictates, and the grantor is giving up control of whatever is in that trust. And they may be, some of those trusts can be in intentionally defective. So maybe the grantor can have some benefits from it. And in other cases, there are certain things that can be amended, like maybe the trustee can be amended. But most of the time they can't be amended unless all the beneficiaries agree to amend it, or you go to the court to try to get the court approval to amend it. So irrevocable trusts are, they shouldn't be taken lightly, but they are a really good vehicle to save on estate taxes and for asset protection in the right circumstances. So the thing that I think, there are certain irrevocable trusts that I do pretty much on a regular basis. One being an irrevocable life insurance trust, an ILIT. And those are great trusts to create because most of the time, if you have a term policy and you put it in the name of your ILIT, the ILIT becomes the owner and the beneficiary of the life insurance proceeds. But most of the time, you're not getting those proceeds all the time until you pass away, right? And then your beneficiaries are getting the proceeds. So it is a great vehicle for protection from estate taxes if that is your concern, that if that amount of insurance is going to push your estate over the estate tax exemption limit. It serves as a great vehicle to save on estate taxes. And you wouldn't have had that money during your lifetime anyway. But if you fund it with whole life insurance, as long as you don't want access, by way of a loan or use that life insurance for anything, that also is a good vehicle to put your whole life into, because you pay the premiums you can gift the money to the Irrevocable Life Insurance Trust to then pay the premiums on it. And it's just very tax efficient if you should need that. So that's one vehicle I use on a regular basis for clients. Um,
And so, Alessandra, for right, and just so you know, for the audience to track that, because basically you're giving up ownership of that asset. You've
yes.
purchased that life insurance, and now you are basically handing that off for the ILIT, the trust, to be the owner,
Hmm.
essentially, of that asset. And there are other, trustees that are named in this that control that asset. You don't now. And that's the way it provides this level of protection in place. And even, when we talk about later, is the even removing it out of your estate because you don't actually own it anymore. Is that accurate?
Correct. Correct. And the only way to then cancel it is by not paying the premiums. So, so the only way to revoke it actually is by not paying the premiums and thereby not having the policy anymore. But if, take out a new policy in the name of the Irrevocable Life Insurance Trust, it's immediately in the trust. So that's beneficial to some people. Um, if you move an existing policy and make it the owner and the beneficiary, there is a 3-year look back. So that's something that people should keep in mind. But again, it's a great vehicle for tax savings if you should need that, if you take out large life insurance policies to, for whatever reason, to take care of your family, to pay off your mortgage, if something should happen to you, or to pay estate taxes, which is what some people end up doing, is taking out life insurance policies if they do think they're going to be over the estate tax exemption and they feel like their beneficiaries are going to need some more liquidity upon their death or down the road. Um, and then there's another one that's very frequently done is an irrevocable trust, for the children in your family, or per child, because as you may know, we're entitled to gift $18,000 tax free to anyone each year. Right now it's $18,000. It will change, over time, depending upon what, again, legislature does. But that's also a really good vehicle to be able to gift to your children and then have those funds protected from marital dissolution or creditors, for you to get some money out of your own estate if you need to, diminish funds from your estate. So, but yet you're still those funds are going to be used for your children. They're just going to be used for your children according to what the trust says and when the trust says that it can be used for the children. And again, can only be modified or amended in certain ways. So you're losing control of that money, clearly, but the money is going to the welfare of your children according to what the trust itself says.
That makes sense. That makes sense. So, what are, some of the other outside the ILITs and such, any other irrevocable trusts that are you see more commonly used to protect assets and hopefully
Yeah,
transfer.
I mean, you hear people talking about SLATs a lot and DAPs a lot. There's all these acronyms and people like GRATs and all these different types of trusts that, people will be like, what's that? Or my friend has this. I want to have one of those, that type of thing. So it really just depends upon your situation on what type of trust you would want if you want these types of asset protection trusts and what works for your family and for your goals. So, like a spousal lifetime access trust, a SLAT, can only be used or drafted if you're married, right? Because it's spousal, right? So it's, giving, your spouse lifetime access to certain funds. And then once your spouse should pass, then those funds go on to the next beneficiaries, which, are likely your children. And if not your children, maybe you don't have children, and maybe it's your nieces or nephews or a charity or whatever the trust would say. But it is a way to, give your spouse what they need for their lifetime, but not allow them to diminish all the trust proceeds, right? And have a little bit, you have a little bit more control from the grave, I should say, right? And then the other thing is the Domestic Asset Protection Trust, the DAPT. Now, those are irrevocable, and those are different via state. And some states allow an irrevocable self-settled trust. Connecticut does. New York does not. So, but if you live in New York, you can have that type of trust created under another state's laws. So, that type of thing, it's a self-settled domestic trust. And they're, you know, it's an important trust because it can protect certain assets if you put them in the name of the trust. But again, you're taking those assets out of your name and putting them in the name of the trust and having the trustee manage those assets according to what the trust says.
Yeah.
So, there's certain reasons, to be doing any of these things, right? To be used for estate taxes, to minimize estate taxes, to be able to access governmental benefits and protect assets in general, right? So, there is definitely good use for them, but just be aware when entering into any of those things that you will not, need immediate, need those funds.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, it's definitely it's why you go into these conversations and you know what you're getting into. And the thing that I also come across with for folks who are also thinking legacy and certainly trying to protect their wealth, they also are in some ways a lot of them are charitably minded, right? They want to provide to others and society in other ways. So I know there's some options for folks who are trying to be able to fund more of some of their assets to charity and they get breaks, and this is kind of a
Yeah,
nice incentive from our government to help it for those who are charitably minded. So
sure.
can you share just any thoughts on that for things that
Absolutely.
for people to consider?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, there's two main types of charitable trust. There's a charitable lead trust, and they provide income to a charity for a certain period of time, after which the remaining assets are then passed on to beneficiaries. So that type of trust is beneficial for those who want to make charitable donations, but still also want to provide for their loved ones, right? So they don't want to give the whole amount to charity, but they want to give the income off the trust assets to the charity for a set period of time. And then the rest goes to the beneficiaries. So that's the charitable lead trust. And then there's a charitable remainder trust, which basically provides income to the beneficiaries. It's kind of flipped for a certain
Yeah,
period of time, right? After which, then the remaining assets pass on to the designated charity or charities, right? So, that's something that's, used when, you know, it's beneficial to provide to the beneficiaries for a set period of time, but you want the bulk of the assets to then go to charity. But sometimes I see that, I mean, you see it in all types of instances, depending upon the wealth of the client, but I have seen that more often than not. Someone who doesn't have children, have their own children, but they want to leave to their nieces and nephews, but then have the remainder go to charity.
No, that makes sense. That makes sense. And that's why it's so important to have these broader conversations to understand kind of, where all your assets are and how to use them most efficiently so you can plan for it, right? Because there's like 2 points, there's many options here and combinations of things, right? To
Right.
potentially connect together, right? I've
Yeah.
heard people use like a charitable remainder trust and then have a separate asset of life insurance on the side because that will help supply money in other ways to
Yeah.
charities or families, however you want, so they can kind of couple these things to make them even more impactful for whatever they're trying to achieve. So this really requires experts like Alessandra to really help sort of help you think through that, right?
Yeah.
And get what you really want out of your money,
Yeah.
get the most out of it.
And there are trusts, Tom, that, the one trust I haven't talked about, I haven't talked about a lot of different trusts, but the one trust that's fairly common is a GRAT, which is a Grantor Retained Annuity Trust. That's an irrevocable trust that allows the grantor to transfer assets to beneficiaries while still remaining the right to have income from the trust for a certain period for themselves. So they actually still get a benefit from whatever's in the trust, but it's just the income from the assets that are in the trust. So that's beneficial for those who still want to, who want to transfer assets to their heirs while they're still living, but want to retain some control over the assets.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And that's why it's so important to have these broader conversations and solicit help from an expert can help you think through these potentially complicated situations. When you take them in isolation, maybe they're straightforward, but this is why it's so key to talk to someone like Alessandra who can help you coordinate the different assets together so what you're trying to achieve is obtainable. And sometimes you have to use different tools along the way, whether they're unique trusts or different other assets that kind of complement, whether it be life insurance or other types of. So it's so important. So, Alessandra, you gave a lot of great information around what things to consider, and really what I would urge folks to think about if this is an area with to go seek out someone like Alessandra or somebody else that you trust to help you think through these things because they can get complicated and someone who can help you guide you through. So, Alessandra, thank you again for all your expertise and wisdom, and appreciate you sharing these ideas with my audience, and look forward to having you back on the show. Thanks for joining me on this episode today. I really am grateful for you as listeners to the Perennial Pride podcast. I hope you're getting some tremendous value out of it and hopefully pushing you along your journey to financial freedom. I put this podcast together really to help help you get more educated around your finances so that you feel empowered to live the life that you really want. And if you like the content that you heard today or watched, then I would encourage you to go to my website, perennialpride.com. There's tons of other content there. And you can access my book, Wealth Beyond the Numbers. You can buy it there on my website. It's a aggregation of a lot of great tips and tools I've learned to not only build my wealth in my accounts, but build wealth in my life and abundance and joy, and something that has a lot of my experiences in the journey that I've been on personally. Hopefully that can be also of value to you as you sort of move forward. So thanks again for being a Perennial Pride listener, and we'll see you on the next